Welcome back to the Walking with Jaguars podcast. Today I am talking to Nell, who is a mother, a wife, and a badass Bitcoiner located in Queenstown, New Zealand, and is building a pretty interesting peer-to-peer community out there and, seeing where the whole Bitcoin signal goes. Before we dive in, is there any other hats or labels you like to wear just so the listeners can kind of work out who you are?
Mm. No, I'm a born and bred chav. Have you ever heard of chav?
I haven't.
Chav? Chav's like I guess in Australia you'd be like bogan.
Oh yeah, born and bred. That's me.
Yeah, so you're a bogan, I'm a chav. So, you know, like orange face, um, wears pajamas to the shop, Ugg boots. Yeah, just like common as muck.
Uh huh. Yeah, love it. Probably why we get along so well. Yeah. All right. Let's just dive right in. What first drew you to the wonderful world of Bitcoin?
Drew me or dragged me would be the better question. My husband dragged me for sure. So, he'd been looking into it for a while. We were just saying before about crypto. Um, he he had a lot of investments, and he was really looking into things. And then he bought some crypto, and he got scammed, and said to me, "Hey, I've done this thing, and I've done this thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, is what it is." And then he said, "But hey, look, I've actually now I'm starting to look into it, and I found Bitcoin." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, whatever." And at the time, we were going through quite a lot. We were going through post-COVID stuff, which in New Zealand was crazy. So we're going through all that. I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and so life was pretty busy. I had a business as well. And then so he's telling me about this Bitcoin thing, and I was like, you know what? I just don't care. Just go out and make us some money, and I didn't care. And I think that's quite common for women. I definitely think there's not very many women in the Bitcoin space, and a lot of it is that we're naturally not as interested in investments. And I will say that people say, "Oh, there's always going to be an exception," but for the whole, I didn't really care unless he made us money, and then I was like, "Oh, this is good. Keep going, keep doing that." And then one day he said, "You need to understand what this is I'm doing with our money." And so he got me to watch. I can't remember the first one. It might have been that what's it? Thank God for Bitcoin. No, was it Thank God for Bitcoin? There was a YouTube. I don't know, something like that. So we watched that. I don't know. It was really really good. And then I was like, oh okay, this is interesting. And then I watched What's the Problem by Joe Bryan. And then after that, it was just, this is crazy. I couldn't believe about the biggest head scratcher for me was that money wasn't backed by anything, right? And then you go, what? How can money not be backed by anything? Like, what is it? And you start diving into that world. And then that's just one rabbit hole that you can't get out of once you see that. And so I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I just started consuming so much. So Natalie Brunell was amazing. And I guess I'd gravitated towards her because she was female. But then Bram from um, Bitcoin for Millennials, I listen to him heaps, love him. And so just, yeah, just consuming it and going, wow, this is interesting. So
Hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those things, at least like for me, where as soon as I started to actually feel like the real breadcrumbs of what Bitcoin is, outside of like the money making everything of like its actual kind of texture, you don't really have like a rational understanding as to why this thing is so epic, but you just have this strong intuition that just pulls you down this rabbit hole.
I love the word rational because I was saying to you before that I got baptized last year, and my whole life I was brought up atheist, and it was because rationally it doesn't make sense. rationally, how can this be? And if you read the Bible, which I have, if you take everything rationally, it couldn't be, right? But then you say, like, there's more to it than that. You talk about intuition and feeling and gut. We have more senses than we use, but if we listen to them, the world is never going to be rational. The world is never going to make sense. If we look at it in that lens, we have to open up. And then all of a sudden, everything opens up. And I think the thing about Bitcoin, why Bitcoiners are so passionate about it, and why people who don't understand it think we're nuts and think we're like preachers and just, having these crazy pills, is because we start seeing the world in a completely different way. Not only do we see the problems in the world, but we see the solutions and we see how the world could be. And that's why it's so exciting, because it's not just money, it's what money can do for everything and everyone. And I get my crazy eyes going, oh, crazy eyes. Like,
Yeah, it is. It's kind like, not that I like to use the term religion around it, but it almost has that impact. And I see people find Bitcoin and they do have a spiritual awakening.
well, I was already on that path. And I think, um, and again, I talk about COVID a lot because in New Zealand, we had a really interesting situation. I don't know if you were following it, but our government um, were very intense with lockdowns and mandates. And that was the first time in my life that I'd ever kind of started asking any questions about anything. I feel like slept, I was sleepwalking for 30 years. And then, I'm a new mother. And then all of a sudden, they start locking us down, which was one thing. But then, if you didn't get a vaccine, all of a sudden you weren't allowed to do things. You weren't allowed to go places. And then people started hating you for it. And this division, and I just suddenly started seeing the world in a different way and going, why is it like this? Why is this happening? And why are people acting this way? Why? I'd never asked why before. I'd never questioned anything. And I think it doesn't matter what it is that triggers you into questioning the world, whether it is COVID, or you start looking into financial systems, or you start looking into food or schooling, anything. As soon as you start asking why, it's a never ending story, because you just question everything. Why do we do this? Why are we still doing this? Why are we not doing something else? And then you go, well, what can we do?
Hmm. And then Satoshi's just like, here, take this. And it's like, oh, thank God.
Well, thank God. Like, people think I'm nuts. I'm like, my theory on Satoshi, my theory on Bitcoin is that it was a gift, right? From who? I mean, could a human create something that perfect? Maybe I do sound like a religious nut, but maybe in the same way that I always use the term of like getting on the ship, getting on the ark, like Noah's Ark, right? That's a gift. That's helping people. It's like when humanity is at a point where it needs saving, here you go. The financial system is so broken, it's so messed up. Everybody is feeling it. Everybody, in some way, is a slave to it. And out of nowhere comes this perfect money that everybody can use, everybody can access. And like we were saying before, there's no borders. Everybody, no, there's no exceptions. That is the ultimate gift, to help us help ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I'm like but who is Satoshi, this, that, CIA, whatever. There's like so much fucking noise around all of it. And I'm at the point now where like the rabbit hole I've gone down with Bitcoin is so deep and this thing is so immaculate at every single level that it actually feels beyond what humans would be capable of creating. But like even just like technically, but then we talk about the fact that Satoshi came in, made this thing, stacked up 1 million coins, so would be the richest person in basically human history, and then disappeared and never used any of it. It's almost like this crazy kind of messiah effect on reality, where the origin story, it is religious, you know?
Although you sound a little bit irrational there.
I'm irrational in a lot of ways, don't you worry.
I don't worry about what people think. This is my opinion. This is how I think. You start with a rational idea of like, oh, okay, well, people always start with, oh, the blockchain's a very interesting technology, and blah blah blah. And then by the end of it, you're like, what is it? that Joe Rogan says, oh, the Earth's flat. Oh, you kind of just go through this never ending rabbit hole. But where is that rabbit hole taking us to? And it's a pretty cool journey to go down.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's like what I say to like my homies and stuff, where they're like, what if you're wrong about Bitcoin? And for me, it's like, you have to stand for something and you have to like act in some way in this world and you have to, have your savings account in something. And I'm willing to gamble it all on Bitcoin because it doesn't even really feel like a gamble. And if I'm going to like die on some hill, it's this one, you know? And it's made my life so much better. And it's given me so much hope for the future, which is even like a crazier thing. So I'm curious, was there like a was there like an orange pill moment where it was like, holy shit?
I mean, definitely understanding that the money wasn't backed by gold. But like you say, the Bitcoin, once I understood what Bitcoin could do for humanity, which sounds so like, blah. If all of humanity will save all the children. But, as a mother with young children going after COVID, I was so worried about everything. Being a new parent is stressful, right? You're constantly just suddenly worrying about these little people, and you're worrying about what they're eating and their sleep and just them in general. And am I doing the right thing? And just constant guilt, constant. And then you add in all the worry about technology and the AI and all these things other people are just worrying about. And then you start worrying about government overreach and, oh, and then like when you learn about inflation, you're worrying about that. And it's just everywhere you look is a concern and a worry. And then when you start understanding what Bitcoin could do, the time preference, and how, if you have financial freedom, you can feed your family how you want them, how you can feed them what you want them to eat. You can live where you want to live. You can teach them what you find important. You can surround them by people that you want them to be surrounded by. All of a sudden, you do have hope. You have hope for them, for their opportunities, for their potential, for whatever they want to do. And then it's so freeing. It's so reassuring that actually there is a future. There is a bright future, and it's being created by people who can see it. And then I talk to my friends who don't have Bitcoin, and all they're worried about is, everybody's worried about money. Everybody's worried about money. Both parents are working more and more and more, trying to cram in as many work hours as they can. The kids are at complete capacity at daycare. They're not seeing each other. And then when they do see each other, they're just stressed out. Add in Bitcoin, add in that hope, it goes.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's so nice.
Yeah. That's absolutely beautiful.
I'm a better person. I'm a better mother.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a father yet, but I'm definitely going to be a better father if I'm a father with Bitcoin.
You got some good fundamentals. Yeah, do. If you don't know the rules to the game, how can you teach your children? Like, my parents didn't understand what money is, so they couldn't teach me about money. They didn't know what learning it now. My mum's just read the Bitcoin Standard, which was really cool. She got pissed off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So to just dive right in, we've touched on it already, and Bitcoin is like an amazing solution. But what is the problem? So, is the money we use today broken?
Yeah, 100%. I think Joe Bryan explained it brilliantly because he linked every aspect. of our broken society back to broken money. And again, once you see that, you can't unsee it. Um, Everyone is. How have we? How have we got less time in our day? How have we? When we've got such amazing technology, innovation, how do we have? How are we more stressed with less time than we were 100 years ago? That does not make sense. We should have more time. We should be freer. We should be able to, you know, outsource the crappy things to robots, but we're not. We're more stressed and less free than we've ever been. How? It's not rational, is it? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I spent a lot of time with the indigenous, and it's a really nice perspective for me to look at with Bitcoin as like a parallel where I see them and they don't have a lot, like in terms of material wealth, but they are stoked with their lives. And part of that is like they have everything they need. The ones who want to integrate into Western society the most instantly have the most stress because then they compare themselves and their lack of material wealth to the West. But the ones who are just happy doing what they've kind of done, they're good. And they work, but only for like a few hours a day to do what's required to live. And somehow we've made this great inversion with all the technology and wealth that we've created in this world to, like you said, we have no time. How is that even possible?
And we always feel guilty. We're always feeling guilty about things we're not doing or we should be doing all that. So even when we do have a minute to ourselves, this societal guilt that we're not doing enough and that we could do more and we should be doing more and keeping up with them, and it's just constant until we can't do it anymore.
Uh-huh. And I think a big piece of that is like subconsciously, it feels like our goals are getting away from us. And I would also attach that to like the inflation is happening, whether you like it or not. So I guess that leads into what is fiat?
Well, my husband, he that I said to you, he's starting a podcast. Fiat as a scam. I could not describe it in any other way. It's an absolute scam. And like we were saying, the rules of the game, the majority of people don't understand the game, let alone the rules of it. It it's just no matter which way you look at it, everyone's just getting screwed over. The fact that you can work so hard and stress, like we're saying, stress your precious time away from your loved ones, away from your creativity, away from your passions, to work for someone, to then earn a money that someone else can print. That is that is evil. That is not okay. And yet we normalize it. Not only that, but it's so normalized to pay taxes, right? And then if you say, why are we paying taxes? And, oh, you're a dodgy person, or you're a bad person. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't pay taxes. I'm asking, why are we paying taxes? Why are we paying so much? Where's it going? And why am I paying them when they can print their part? It That's not okay. That's not, I mean, the word fair, what is fair? But that's not fair. My time is precious.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And fiat itself, it literally means by arbitrary decree. It means because we said so.
Yeah.
And where did we go wrong that we thought democracy was the way to go and that the government was meant to be a segment of like who we voted in our best interest and they were basically like employees of the people. That was the idea. But then you give them the money printer and they become overlord.
Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday with a young guy. would he have been 21, I guess? And he was asking me about Bitcoin, and then we were talking about inflation, and it's so hard to, if you've got 2 minutes of someone's day, to try and pack in, like, what do I tell you? I want you to know, but I need to give you a little snippet that will then hopefully open up your own interest and then you can dive in. But I just said, look, throughout history, we've always had um, people in charge, or, dodgy people, whoever, clipping the ticket. It's always been, we had these old coins and they'd be clipping around the outside, and our money was always devalued. But it was quite obvious, if your coin starts out yay big and then you get it back and it's, tiny, it's obvious that someone's doing it. I think the problem now is that people don't realize how the money's being devalued and how inflation works. And then we've got the media and all these, academic professionals telling us that inflation is a good thing, and, this is just what it is. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. We can't keep doing this. What does that mean? A loaf of bread's going to cost $50? Is that just what we do? No, that does not make sense. That's not okay, that we're just going to keep inflating away to nothing and then we're just going to work more and more and more. No, I'm opting out. I'm not. Now I know. I'm less stressed about it because I understand what the game is. I see it for what it is, and I go, I don't want to play. And hang on a minute, there's another game over here. I know the rules, they can't be changed, and all the players are there. I can see them all, and I want to play that game. That I'm over, kick the board up and move over there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like what you said there with inflation is really interesting, where the inflation is happening, but because the number in your bank account doesn't change, you don't think anything's happened to it. Imagine if we've somehow flipped the system where fiat was there was a fixed supply, right? But the government had full control into how it could move money around, and everyone saw their bank account go down by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% a year. What that would do to the psychology of people being like, wait a second, wait a second. This is theft, you know?
Right. People look at, if they're wage earners, they're like, oh, I've got a pay rise, and you're like, but it, compared to what? When you how they skew it, so it's like, when I like looking at, like, this could buy you this back then and this can buy you this now. For me, I'm such a visual learner, and I guess the way that they skew it is so confusing that the majority of people are like, whatever. But when you see it like that, and like you say, that's a very obvious way of going, they're literally stealing from me every day through everything and then taxing me on it. And there's so many taxes, and then, but, oh, we've just had another one here because, it's for the good of society, and, oh, if you don't do this, then you're a bad person, and, oh, think of the babies and the old people, and you're like, but you're not. You're taking my money and then you're just swanning it on whatever. I thought Doge was really interesting. Did you see all the things that the United States government were paying for things, all the different schemes?
Oh, just very, very briefly.
I mean, that was just, I knew that the government's wasted money, but when you see it listed out, what they've spent and what they've sent it on, who makes those decisions? I certainly don't. I don't want you to spend my money on that, but it's mandatory and tough. And if we need more, we'll just print some more. Tough. Deal with it. Deal with it, peasant.
Exactly. It has. It's created this weird, like, oligarch peasant kind of situation. And people think that their lives are so good because the quality of life is increased. And it's somehow due to the government and not the productivity and genius of the human spirit. It's like instead of taking that and being like, look what we've achieved as humanity, being like, thank you, government, for making our lives so comfortable. There's like a delusion in people that's happened there. So if we pivot off fiat, which is backed by nothing, by arbitrary decree by our overlords, what had made gold valuable for the last 5,000 years?
Well, I mean, again, they always say about the scarcity of it, which I think is debatable. Well, where we live is called Arrowtown. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, just outside of Queenstown. So it was an old gold mining village, right? So 1800s and something. And so they were dredging the gold out of the river, and you can still find gold here. So I've got a friend. He lives up about an hour away from here, and he's got his own what's it called? Wait, he's got his own production where he can mine gold. His claim. My point is, we don't know how much gold there is. We don't. We're always finding it, and who's to say how much there is? Who's to say how much there is? We will never know. We'll never ever know how scarce gold is. So although, like, yes, it's it's got a lot of good properties to it, the scarcity factor, I'm like, it's a bit of a debatable one. I guess that the fact that it's so hard, it's you can't replicate it in the way that you can diamonds, makes it pretty valuable, and it's very pretty. I'll give you that.
Uh-huh. It looks expensive. Yeah. I said this in the last podcast I did, but I'm reading the story of Crazy Horse, who was a Lakota leader when the whites were kind of taking over, and just watching them watch the white people go crazy for gold, and all the chiefs were like talking amongst each other, like, what do you think they use this for? Why are they all like killing each other and dying over this thing? And they're like, it must be a special white man medicine.
Oh, well, I've just been listening to what's it called? Monochromic gold. Have you ever heard of that? The ancient Egyptians used to use it. I'm not going to give you a definition because I don't know enough, but we bumped into this guy in Wellington. He was out the gate. And it's kind of one of those encounters. So I was standing outside a shop, and my husband was on the bench. I'd just been, in the shop, looking at tack. And I walk outside, and this man walks up to me, and he looked like a complete Fruit Loop, right? If you imagine a Fruit Loops, we look like. And so my instant reaction was to kind of like stand back and walk away. And he goes, "Oh, have you heard of monochromic gold?" And then something within me was like, "You need to listen to this guy. Just give him the time of day." And he was so interested, and he was talking about how gold, ancient Egyptians have used gold. There's something to it where that people ingest it. So I've been starting to look into like that sort of properties of gold. That's what interests me in a way that it's like it's it's part of the energy or something to do with the connection to a higher source in that way. And I think that gold has always been precious to humanity, but I don't believe it's always been precious in a monetary way, like as an exchange of value. There's something else to it for sure. But anyway, this guy was crazy and so interesting. And I wondered how many times in my life I've not had a cool conversation with someone because I've judged them for, coming across a certain way. He was really interesting. Um, and we're talking before about, crazy people in the world. Wellington in New Zealand is kind of our woke city. So it's full of blue haired crazy people walking around everywhere. And this guy is telling me about gold and mushrooms and how crazy the government is, the fiat system, flat earth, all this stuff, talking to source, all this stuff. And I was like, who's the crazy one here? Old guy walking down the road, who doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know if he's a man or a woman. He's absolutely adamant, that he's never going to have a family. Or this guy who's telling me about connecting to source. I was like, I think I like that crazy guy way more. I'm going to talk to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then there's the inverse as well, where like, we met at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas, and I was there like working, like, helping run a booth. And I was like, okay, I just need some fresh air to get out of this, big warehouse full of AC and artificial lighting and all these people and everything. So I went outside and I just went outside smoking my pacho. And this guy came up to me and he was like, "Hey, do you have a lighter?" And I was like, I'm going to network this, that. And he was like wearing a super nice suit, had like a Patek watch on, all fancy and everything. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, here. And then I was like, "Oh, so what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm here. I'm working on a quantum proof crypto project, And then it was like just the discernment. It was like as soon as he gave the lighter back, I just walked away. Actually, not even worth talking to, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you connect with people, don't you? I think I said it to you, like, when I met you, I was like, I felt instant connection and I didn't know why. And then you have more conversations with people and then you find a link of some description. There's so many people that we meet that we miss out on that opportunity to connect with them because for whatever reason. But also the ones that you do connect with and you think, I don't have anything with you. We're very, very different. I don't want to waste my time with those people. The negative and not thinking about stuff. So, but no, didn't feel that with you for sure.
No, we just got along two peas in a pod basically instantly, which is nice. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you touched on it. So gold has had its value because of scarcity, and that scarcity is still questionable in its very nature because we don't know how much there is. Although it's like the supply has, increased at 1 to 2% a year, that doesn't mean someone can't find a submarine and go find the entire amount of gold in the world currently right now, in quotes that we, talk about, and basically create like a, 50% inflation instantly overnight on it.
Well, the other thing is that not all gold is the same. Not all gold is equal. There's different qualities of gold, which they were saying is one of the issues with Fort Knox. That even if the gold is in there, like what kind of gold is it, and is it, what kind of grade? So it's not just every gold you find is A grade or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's like periods in history where that's been done, where it's been like quantitative easing, forced inflation on people even back on the gold standard, where they were like, okay, we need people are fucking the top people say people are messing with the currency, which is kind of just fucking propaganda bullshit. We need to bring it all back in, and then they remint all the coins that were 100%, 99% gold, and now they make them 75%, give them all back, and then they take that extra 25 as their little prize on fucking over the entire population.
Their price.
Yeah. So if that is the case, so fiat's backed by nothing, gold only had value because it's scarce, and that's even questionable. What gives Bitcoin value?
Well, exactly. Uh, Going back to the quality of it, each Bitcoin is the same. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and there's a fixed amount, and I love that. I love to know, like we keep saying about the rules of the game. I like to know where I stand. I like to know that if I get one of those bad boys, that's it. They're not going to print off another 20 and devalue the one that I've worked so hard to get. That's cool. Whereas I could go down to the Arrow River and hoik up a bit of gold. I'd have to put work in though. It's pretty cold down there.
So why is a fixed supply such a big deal?
But well, that's exactly the point, isn't it? Everyone knows where they stand.
In comparison to the network. Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah. Whereas, like, how many dollars are there?
No one will ever know. No one can possibly ever know. They can do all the calculations and try and work it out. It is a mess. It's an absolute mess. I mean, I like seeing those charts when they show you how much money's been printed. there's a chart, and it's not even, I don't even think they've added the last 3 or 4 years, but the chart starts in 1700 and something, and it's this little line, and it blips, and it's showing inflation, right? And it shows you in any little blip is like a war where they've obviously had to get some money in. But how did they use to get money, right? They would tax people or take it by force, right? Because it was all out there. The money was already there. They just had to find a way to hoard it in. And then it actually goes sort of under a little bit in the 1800s because of innovation and technology, and we have this boom of, you know, and then all of a sudden you hit 1971, and it's just like up to the freaking ceiling. You're like, oh, I wonder what caused that. How can we just be blipping along because the money wasn't there, and then they've just, it, in no time in history has that ever worked, to create something and just keep creating it and no one keep any tabs on what's there. I don't want that money.
Yeah, and like have skin in the game around what happens with the money. Like you were saying, just like all the wastage, and like every now and then I'll get like a little, something pop up on my screen. And one of them was like, Canada gave like $100,000 to the Congo or something to help with a sanitary program. And then if you actually work out what it was that they could put signs all over the beaches saying, "Do not shit here." And it's like, why is Canada giving $100,000 to that project?
Well, that was the thing about the Doge thing, is like it was all little programs like that. But then even if those programs sound silly, you can dive into every single one of them and you go, even if the cause is completely ridiculous, even if I don't agree with it and I think it's a waste of money, actually how much of that money is going to that cause, and how much money is going to their admin and their whatever, like kind of it's all money laundering. That's what that is the government taking your money, printing money, and then filtering it to wherever they want it to go to. That's what that is. And I recently, because been using Nosta, when they had those floods in Texas, there was a guy who was on the ground with a tractor helping people, literally dragging people out of mud and water and out of helping people out of trees. A real person helping. And I was like, I want to give this guy some money, because I'm not I can't help him in any other way. And rather than paying a charity, which then again filters through, and then how much does the end actually get? I was able to pay him directly through my Bitcoin wallet to his. I just paid him. And yeah, there's a little bit of trust there. I've got to trust that this guy's going to take the money and use it for good. But I had the option to give him that money directly, to actually feel like I can contribute and help. And I think that's the problem with all these different organizations and these groups, is that you're not going to source, you're not actually helping the problem. It's all frittering and being distributed wherever they see fit.
Diluted. So I guess that leads nicely into like what are you working on with like the Bitcoin Basin, and how is like building a peer-to-peer community going?
It's going great. It's really frustrating. It's really hard. So where we live, I'll give you a little overview of what Queenstown is. So Queenstown is a tourist town. Um, we have always been a little ski resort town. So we've got mountains here, and it's very beautiful. Mountains and lakes, absolutely stunning. Quite similar to Canada. And so the population here has been growing over the years, but we're still only about 50,000 residents. But we get millions of people coming in every year just to visit because it's so beautiful. And over the last few years, particularly, so it's like an adrenaline filled town. You can come here, you can do bungee jumps and skydives and four-wheel biking and, all this cool stuff. And then obviously skiing in the winter. But now we've got lots of biking tracks as well. So we've got, downhill bikers from all over the world, lots from Canada as well. And they come here and, they just have a really good time. And so obviously our main economy is tourism. And then COVID happened, and then the switch flipped, right? And so the town was like, "What do we do? We don't have any tourists. How are we how are we going to survive?" And so many businesses, they failed, because even with all the money printed from the government and the handouts and stuff, like, it didn't work. And so the town was trying to reinvent itself, trying to work out how to pivot, and even when the tourists come back, learn from that lesson that we can't have all our eggs in one basket. And so we've got a lot of tech people here. So we've got a group called Technology Queenstown, which is trying to help techies from around the world come and live here and set up businesses here and grow our tech side, so we can distribute our eggs. Um, so that was really cool. So we do have some very interesting and very clever people here. And we've also got some very passionate Bitcoiners. We've got one guy in particular, Rob Clarkson. He was one of the co-founders of Lightning Pay, which is our only Kiwi Bitcoin exchange. And he has been trying to teach people about Bitcoin for years. And so he's set up the flag here. Um, and the Kiwi Bitcoin community is quite small, but so is the population. So we've only got, I don't know, 5.5 million, maybe 6 million people all up in New Zealand. And so it was like, trying to build this Bitcoin community is quite hard because there's not very many people here. But Queenstown is such a unique place. And because we get so many people coming through, it seemed like the perfect place to build a Bitcoin community. And a few people were like, "Oh, this would be a great place for a circular economy." And obviously, we've seen places all around the world that benefit from circular economies. The problem is that most of those economies come from a need, whether that's poverty or, they're completely remote. And so, like, places that we would take inspiration from, like El Zonte, for example, we can't really relate to, because we are a beautiful place, we are a tourist place, but we've also got a lot of wealth here, which we come across as quite an affluent town, but we're not. There's a lot of people here that are struggling, and a lot of keeping up with the Joneses. And so it has been tricky, because we know that setting up a Bitcoin circular economy, teaching people about Bitcoin, connecting them with each other is beneficial for everybody, right? But the problem we face in New Zealand and in an affluent place like Queenstown is that people don't realize that they're in trouble. They don't realize there's a problem. They actually think they're quite wealthy, even though they're not, right? Because everyone's got this crazy mortgage. Everyone's got these hugely expensive cars. And we'll go back to the quality of life. These people might look like they're doing really well, but they're both working crazy hours. Their debt is just insane. The amounts of debt that people have here is just crazy. And so it's been quite good, because we're setting up this economy to help people understand first what the problem is and then how we can help ourselves. But the community in Queenstown is helping people understand that we're here and we accept Bitcoin. So we've got 43 businesses at the moment, which doesn't sound like a whole heap, but here is huge. Like I said, 50,000 people we've got here, right? We've got 43 businesses that openly accept Bitcoin, and we're growing it. We're growing it. So I think we've got the largest growing circular economy, definitely on this side of the earth, but maybe ever, time wise.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so out of those like 43 businesses, is this like a pretty big mix of different services? Like when I look at like Costa Rica as an example, there's a big circular economy starting to form here too, called the Bitcoin jungle. And at first, like how it came about was all the Bitcoiners who were living in Canada and the US during the lockdowns who were getting super disturbed by everything that was happening, but like, I want to get out of here. And they, like, a handful of them ended up in Costa Rica, and they were all sitting on Bitcoin, and they were like, well, shit, it would be really nice if we could use Bitcoin here. So they just went in and just built all the tech and built the on and off rails, and like went and made, or like educated, especially like the food growers and things like that, around coming into the network. So there's lots of places where you can like buy meat and buy vegetables, and like in terms of just like an average way of life. I'm curious how diversified those 43 businesses are.
Extremely. Um, you could get off a plane, you could go buy yourself a coffee, you could go buy yourself some lunch and a beer, you could do a skydive, you could get your house built. And while you're getting your house built, you could pay the electrician, you could pay the landscaper, the plumber, you could go on a hunting mission, a fishing mission, you could buy some greenstone. Like we've got a lot of services. Most of our businesses come initially from Bitcoiners that own a business, which is quite common. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the Bitcoin world. And then from then, so we've got our core Bitcoiners have businesses. So obviously they set up first. And then a lot of fooderies. So you can get pizzas and pastries and actually, there's a lot of pizza, and I wonder if it's this Bitcoin pizza day, but we've got like 3 different pizza places here, and it's growing too. We've only been doing this effort for about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that. And so we're still feeling this early momentum of going, yeah, you can take Bitcoin as money. And they go, how? Why? And that opens up this question. And we printed off these should have one here. We printed off these cards and it just says, do you want to accept Bitcoin in your business? And so as a community, anytime we visit a business, doesn't matter what it is, we'll just leave them with that card. And it's a way of, we call it like a non-confrontational way of orange pilling someone. Because I've found, seeing as I talk about Bitcoin so much every day, people get annoyed if they feel they don't understand or they feel in any way feel stupid, right? But if you leave someone with a reading material and they can look at it in their own time, they don't feel pressured, let them find their own way. Often they end up contacting you and they're like, oh, I saw this card and I'm interested. And so we're getting a lot more people kind of coming to us now, which is really cool. Um, we want to be known as a Bitcoin destination. And, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're definitely feeling it. And the our meetups are growing, and it's it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's something really interesting there, where like you have all the services, because I think a big issue with the circular economies being created is, especially in terms of like businesses, is that they may not be super liquid, where they can't just overnight take all payments in Bitcoin. Otherwise, they just have to basically sell it all anyway, because they need to go and buy the ingredients for the pizza, or they need to pay for the renovation somehow. Whereas the community that you're kind of creating, it allows it to happen more fluidly, where if you have a grower who the pizza place can buy off, and the grower accepts Bitcoin and the pizza place accepts Bitcoin, and the contractor who might do the renovation on the pizza place also accepts Bitcoin, then it actually allows that fluid economy to start working, versus certain businesses just start stacking up like a Bitcoin treasury that they feel like they don't have access to actually use it, you know?
Yeah. When we set up businesses, because I'm working with Lightning Pay, and so when we help a business accept Bitcoin, we always say like this isn't going to be everything. Like this is not going to be 100% of your business in Bitcoin, and a lot of the businesses won't see a Bitcoin transaction for ages. But it's you're setting up this little flag and saying, "Hey, I believe in this better money." And we always say as well, like, because a lot of Bitcoiners don't want to spend their Bitcoin, right? And you're like, I get it. I completely get it. But we say spend and replace. When you spend Bitcoin in a business, especially when it's a local business, a real person from your community, you're saying to that person, I value your time. I value your produce or your service. I value you as a person. And therefore, I want to give you the best form of money I can. And it feels amazing. And so, what we're trying to encourage, because the problem with the circular economy is it's chicken and the egg, right? You need the business that's going to accept it, but you also need the spender, right? And if you don't have those two, it's not circular. So, we're building relationships as well. Building a circular economy, the most important thing is that people feel a part of a community. And what's really beautiful is seeing these business owners becoming friends and then going, oh, you accept Bitcoin? Oh, so do I. Oh, wow, I'm going to support you. And now, oh, okay, you're going to support me. It's like a referral program. And then they're, they're getting more than just business from it. They're getting friendship and time and referrals. Our local barber, he reckons that he's getting like 3 or 4 people a week from this Bitcoin. That's a lot for a small business that's only just accepted Bitcoin maybe 3 months ago.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think I get the whole like hodl versus spend thing is a huge one, right? But it's only a problem in a kind of small segment of the population or a small slice of people, what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, that just happens to be a big population where me as an individual, 100% of my income is in Bitcoin. So I have no choice but to spend it. To me, it isn't my savings account. It is my savings account, but it's also my income. So the spending happens naturally, right? Like I was paying my landlord, so like I'd have to fucking sell Bitcoin to pay my landlord. So I just or like taught him Bitcoin and now I peer to peer him.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's the same as like I go to the grocery store in Costa Rica and like the on and off ramps here are amazing. So like even if the vendor doesn't want Bitcoin or even know what Bitcoin is, they can receive like a bank transfer from my Lightning. So it goes from my Lightning to like another Lightning wallet that's owned by a third party who's like got a contract with the bank who then sends out the payment to them. But the whole spend hodl thing will just solve itself as intelligent people just start laying down the line of being like, don't pay me in fiat. I don't want it. You know what I mean? And like I run into liquidity issues all the time where like I don't have fiat. I don't have any dollars, And then I'm like, fuck, I
I'm
can use
still in this
Bitcoin.
world. I've got to, yeah.
Exactly. I can use Bitcoin in 90% of my life right now in Costa Rica, but I can't go to Walmart. I can't buy something on Amazon. There's like a handful of things where it's just not even an option. And that is the only time I hold dollars.
So we've got a few people here that are starting to get paid in Bitcoin. I know because I obviously speak to a lot of the businesses, and they're like, and through Lightning Pay. So Lightning Pay is really cool, especially for people that are just kind of bridging between the two worlds. So a business can accept Bitcoin, but they can choose how much. So they can accept, if you were to pay in Bitcoin, they can accept to convert some of that into fiat if they need to. Like you're saying before, if you are a business that's accepting a lot of Bitcoin, but you still need to pay fiat world, then you can convert it and pay them without even having to jump back in that world, which is really cool. And they also have, payment solutions within it. So you can pay the fiat world, but you don't have to do anything. So it means that people are slowly but surely moving on to that Bitcoin standard, which is exactly where we all need to be. I think I love hearing that people are getting wage. I like some of the wages are 50-50, which it makes me feel pretty confident about everything. And if it dips, they're like, sweet. I get more Bitcoin.
Oh, literally, like this last month or whatever, when Bitcoin crashed 30%. Um,
pay
It was like
rise.
double pay this month. Stoked. Because it's still, yeah, it's still like denoted in dollars, so it's fine, it's awesome. But yeah, I think that's like a really interesting piece where like all these businesses that are accepting Bitcoin now should really be teaching their employees the importance of accepting Bitcoin as their salary. And that'll like supercharge the circular economy because then they have no choice but to spend local.
But there needs to be incentives too, like I'll pay you even 5% more if you accept it in Bitcoin. And oh, okay, that interests me. We run we've got a local guy here, Francisco Colombo. He runs the Bitcoin Journey, which is our local educator. Really cool guy. And he works with us at the Bitcoin Basin to educate people. Because again, we say people don't know what the problem is, how are they going to know that there's a way out? You know. And so we say to these businesses, if you accept Bitcoin, we will run free workshops for you and your staff. If you care about the people that are giving you their time, I mean, obviously you're paying them for it, but you care about your employees. If you're a good person, you will give them the gift of prosperity. Just give them the gift of learning, and that's how we're going to orange pill our community. So we are getting staff members interested and listening, which is really cool. The other interesting one that we did recently is we went down south and we spoke to some farmers. So in New Zealand, we are a food producing nation. I think we're one of the only places in the world where if shit hit the fan, we could look after ourselves, right? Because we produce enough food. The problem here is that food price is quite high because we do a lot of exporting, you know. But anyway, the farmers are, even though it's a great business to be in, there's so many rules and regulations, and hatred towards farmers, which I'm not okay with. But anyway, I said we should go and talk to them about Bitcoin. And I don't know if you know this, but there's farmers all around the world using Bitcoin for different ways, and a lot of it is just selling peer to peer, and then taking it that relationship back from the consumer to the producer, which we have lost in the same way that we're talking about, when you give money to these organizations and it gets filtered. Da, 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 da. When you're paying a producer in Bitcoin, you are giving them all of the money for their hard work, and it gives them the incentive to give you the best product because they're getting all the money. Obviously, they're paying their taxes, but.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation with a guy just last week, and he was saying that he went down to like, I think it was maybe like 20 minutes from his place, but like a farm homestead kind of situation that had like a lot of food produce and meat and everything. And they were accepting Bitcoin. And he went there because they were accepting Bitcoin. And he was talking to the owner, and the owner was saying, Bitcoin has changed the way I do business. But a big piece of that is when we're talking about produce and food products, the margins are so small on everything. Whereas like if you sell tech, like you create like a software, it costs you nothing to replicate it. Like it costs them, $1 to make a liter of milk, and they sell it for, $1.50 or whatever it is. Small margins. And even with a 3% card, uh what's it called? It's not a tax.
Transaction
Fee,
fee.
fee. Yeah, even with a 3% transaction fee, that really adds up. When we're talking
Yes.
about lots of small transactions on low margin products over the span of a year or multiple years, it actually means there's way more money kicking around.
Yeah. It all adds up. But those extra regulations are the ones as well, because when we start talking to the farmers, because we buy raw milk, right? Or it should be called real milk. It's, how we should be drinking it. But we buy raw milk, and the farmer basically put out this plea and said to his customers, I really want to keep producing raw milk, but it's kind of costing us money at this point. So they're trying to gauge interest on, do we really actually want to buy the raw milk, or would we be okay with pasteurized stuff? And I was like, what? well, how does this work? And I started looking into the rules here anyway. And the rules here are quite similar to around the world. If I want to buy raw milk, I have to find someone that produces it. And there aren't that many people anymore because it costs them so much, because they have to have all this testing to make sure that it's not poisoned. Anyway, so the other thing about raw milk is that the only ways I can buy it is by picking it up directly from them, like through a either from their hands, or they've got, like, sometimes they've got these what are they called, machines where you buy, a vending machine. So either I go to a vending machine or I buy it, or they have to drop it off to us, and then they take note of who's bought it and stuff like that. But what that is that's peer to peer, and I was like, it's already peer to peer. But what interested me is the fact that I want to buy it, they want to sell it to me, but these other people in this realm of control are saying, no, you can't do that. And you are going to be regulated, you're going to be tested. Why? If I, the buyer, wants to buy it, what's it got to do with them? If I'm taking the risk for my health and my family, what's it got to do with them? I don't care if it's tested. And then they go, hang on a minute, add a bit of Bitcoin into this. And I say, I want that product. I don't care what anyone else says. I want to buy it. Then all of a sudden, they don't have to worry about all the regulation and all the testing and stuff like that, because it's free market. It's me, the consumer, saying, that's what I want. I don't want that pasteurized stuff. There's no, the nutrients aren't there. It's been freaking tampered with.
Yeah, they nuked it.
Exactly. I don't even own a microwave. I don't want you to nuke my stuff too.
Yeah, and it's insane. Like, even when we look at how like the produce markets and things work, like I was living on farms and doing like husbandry stuff in Canada for a while there. And I'm Australian, right? So like I eat lamb. Like lamb was around. Like we would eat lamb more than we would eat beef on a weekly basis, right? You go to Canada and there's no lamb. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, why would there be no lamb here? Like you could buy it like specialty and butchers and stuff like that. But it wasn't like the land was any worse for running sheep. And basically, what it came down to was that the whole industry of food production around meat is they have like you have the ability to run cattle on crown land in Canada. So you pay like, whatever it is, $1 per head of cattle that you run on crown land, which is like the government's land slash national parky kind of stuff. And you're not allowed to do that with sheep. You're only allowed to do that with cattle. So everyone who's a farmer is so incentivized to take part in that regulation scheme that just there is no lamb in the country. And it's just bizarre that there's just this one little rule that gets passed in legislation and it changes the entire food system of the country.
Well, it's the same with the carbon. How farmers are more incentivized now to plant trees because they want to, do the carbon tax stuff. And it's like, well, what does that do for us? I don't want to eat trees. I can't eat bark for breakfast. I was looking up, because we went down to these farmers, and I was trying to find out how much farmland has been bought up. And the statistics could be wrong, right? I'm not 100% sure on the numbers, but it looked like in the last 5 years, about 8% of New Zealand farming land has been converted to non-food producing. And in America, it was about 20%, 20+% gone. That's not a good trajectory. That's to what? Turn into trees, or I guess residential. You could argue that that's a good or a bad thing. But a lot of it's also, if you want to say the old Bill Gates name, into land that's becoming non-real food producing. So he's still producing food, but it's not, I wouldn't call it food. I don't want to be eating that stuff. And this goes back to the free market. I want to give the farmer the option to plant what they want, to grow what they want, to earn the most money for them. And how that works is that they grow it and I value what they're growing and then I buy it. But if someone is controlling that and saying, you can't do this and you can't do that, it gets all messed up. It's just it's a non-organic system. Any control, any way that you take away the organic structure of society, it gets messed up. And this is where we're at with the money. It's the same. As soon as you start meddling.
And the meddling is so extreme, you know? Another one, like when I was living in Canada, of like just how extreme these things are, is you're not allowed to sell. Say you wanted to buy beef from me, right? And I have cows. And they were born on my land and they're going to die on my land, and then I give them to you. I'm not allowed to sell you that as food, right? Because it has to be slaughtered in one of 4 abattoirs in the country to even be like thought of as food. So when we're talking about the free market, it is so broken, where you go to your neighbor, you go, hey, I want one of your cows. And it's like, it's illegal for me to sell it to you. How the fuck did we get here?
Well, we were talking about the other day about cash, right? So I was a tradie. So I was a painter. I had my own painting business, right? When I first started, you do the odd job, people pay you cash, right? And it's up to you as the individual what you do with that cash. And of course, as a good citizen, you're going to take your percentage and give it to the government, right? Because that's what good people do. And, legitimate business owners, right? But you still got to make that decision. Now you're not even allowed to do jobs in cash. They don't. How? Again, this goes back to you want something done, I can do it. Or you want to buy something, I've got it. I'm going to paint your house. You want your house painted, but there's someone else involved. Why? Why is there someone else involved in this transaction? I have something, you need it. Oh, hold on a minute. Let's get this third party involved and give them some of it. Give them give them some of my time and energy and give them some of your time and energy. They're not even here. They're not even involved in it. Why is that? Why is that what we do? They don't know us. They don't even know we're doing this thing, and yet they've got to get involved. It's the same with the freaking milk. Why are they involved in this transaction? Why? Why are they telling you that you can't buy that cow? Why are they saying that? Who are they? This mighty they. So it's so infuriating. But I guess that goes back to like when you start asking questions about everything. I've been looking into the schooling system. We're about to homeschool our kids, and when you start reading about the schooling system, again, the question comes back to why are we doing this? Why is this normal? Why is it built this way? Or why has it become this way? And that's just how it is. And if you don't like it, lump it. The question is always why. But there's always a better way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, the homeschool thing is insane, like you're just expected to get your kids to 4 or 5 years old and then let someone else raise them.
Well, not even that, younger. But but then it's this, well, you can't do it. You're not you're not qualified. My son went to school for a year. And the reason is because we were looking at homeschooling before that. And then he wanted to go. And I was like, I'm gonna let him go because one, obviously I wanted to keep doing more research, but I don't want him to feel like I've deprived him of something that he wanted to do. Okay. And I don't want to be forcing my ideas onto him. He's his own person. Anyway, I went to school and then all these little things kept cropping up. And the teacher, who's so lovely, really, really, really nice. But every now and again, there'd be something said where he'd come back from school and he'd tell me about something, and it could be anything. It could be telling me about painting or whatever, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I know about that." And he'd go, "No, you don't because you're not a teacher." And I'm like, "Okay." So he had this idea that if you weren't the teacher, you weren't qualified to give the lesson or an opinion because you're not that, you know, that level. And I was like, this is a bit concerning because, and then I see it throughout the whole schooling system where there's some people that have the information that you can listen to, But if they're not, if they haven't got the right title or the right qualification, then their opinion is not valid. Their information is misinformation. Again, we saw it through COVID. You know, if you didn't have the right label or the right opinion, then it wasn't a fact. It wasn't true. It was irrelevant. And that's what I see with the schooling system is that as a parent, they stop listening to you because you're not the teacher. And then as a parent, you think, well, I don't know as much because I'm just a mum. What do I know? And then you're outsourcing all of your learning and information to these indoctrination centers. That's how I see it. You're throwing these kids there all day, spending no time with them. And then the way that society is now, everybody's working. So many people, both the mum and dad are working, and they're not just working, you know, 9 till 3. Some of them are working 8 till 5, 8 till 6 p.m. So the time that they do spend with their children is so tiny. What sort of life lessons and impact are you giving your own children? You're outsourcing everything.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And like, I know a bunch of people who went and became teachers, you know, and they're cut from a certain cloth. Not all of them. Some of them are good, you know. My sister's an English teacher, and she's awesome. Yeah, she's a double agent, right? She'll hit me up and be like, because she like drinks ayahuasca and has Bitcoin and she gets it, you know. And she'll be like, "Hey, I have to teach these kids like a short story. Do you have any good ones?" You know, of like actual good like quality codes of like how to live a good life. But a lot of them were also like there were people who learnt a subject, never actually got to put it into practice. Like, say, I have a degree in like quantum physics, right? So, like, there was a lot of people who were like physicists in training who I went to school with. And once they finished school, they're like, their schooling, rather than going and putting that into actual practice of like, creating products and doing real science and doing all of these things, they just became a teacher. So they never actually had like real life experience. And I think we see the same thing with like, who is the person in a school teaching business? Are they an entrepreneur? Like, if they're not, they shouldn't be doing that, you know? So, like,
Are you really qualified to give that advice? You're not.
no. So, like, why am I getting my kids to be raised by these people?
Yeah, so growing up, I always thought I was an idiot, right? And I am a bit of an idiot. I'm definitely a bit bimbo-y sometimes, but I I grew up in a household where everybody read really well, and both my sister and my brother are academics, right? They both went to uni and did the right thing. My brother got a PhD in physics, and so old dunce over here, I was always, they called me the grafter because I was always working and like, I did all the crappy, just everyday jobs. But what I did is I got a lot of life experience, and I never assumed ever that I was the smartest person in the room. And so that meant that I was asking a lot of questions and listening to people. I never had that ego of like, I know more than you, which I do definitely see in a lot of academics where they stop learning because they just assume that they know more than people like myself, or they get this piece of paper and then they're qualified to give information where other people are not. And that's worrying to me because a lot of those academics are spending their time memorizing facts, memorizing things. They're not actually thinking about what they're learning, why that makes sense, why that works, or inventing their own things. We were watching a documentary last night about Leonardo da Vinci and about how much time he spent outdoors, and he didn't actually spend that much time in the way that we would today, like listening and learning and reading these things that have already been invented, that have already been taught before. He was thinking for himself, he was creating and doing for himself. That's the kind of society that keeps growing. Whereas if you've got these people that already think they know everything, but what they have learned is not their own thoughts, that's just memorizing facts. That's not thinking for yourself. That's not critical thinking.
Mm. Yeah, and we somehow have like culturally decided that these people are the thought leaders in every space, and direct experience isn't really doesn't compare to a PhD. And that's where you see the entire world of like even economics now, you know? And it's like if any economist had half a brain, they would realize like everyone should just buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can right now. Otherwise, the humanity is done for, you know? And I try to like I try to talk to my dad about Bitcoin, right? And to be honest, like I'm seen as a bit of a black sheep in the family, let's say, you know? Like I just left, I'm like in a different country. I live a very different lifestyle than any of them have seen. I make money online. They all have jobs. I'm drinking ayahuasca, doing all this stuff, you know? But I'm explaining like the issues with fiat money and the issues with the economy, and he'll just default to, but the PhD economists have thought about this more and like they know what it is. And I see that this like spirit in him of I'm so ready to like give away my my power of like what is true or not in terms of what I believe in and it's just like almost to not have to take responsibility.
Yeah. Well, but do you use that word before about outsourcing? Right? That often gets spoken about when we I think I was listening to a brand podcast the other day. They kept using the word outsource in terms of like psychedelics. You're listening in, and you know it's very much that you're listening. You're not standing there preaching to ayahuasca about how the world works. You're sitting there, you're open, you're listening. I find it a lot in church as well. Like, I mean, there's very few people I've ever met that are openly Christian and drink medicine. They're either or, right? But everyone's outsourcing to, I mean, even to the Bible in some sense, or to the preacher, like, this is how it works. And I don't know, I'm just a humble congregation member, and you know better than me. Whereas what happens when you don't outsource and you're asking questions and you're listening is you're open to all of the information. You're not setting your decision in stone. It's a fluid thing. That's the beautiful thing about thinking for yourself and listening, which I do struggle with in academics. And the Keynesian academic model, particularly, as I've only started looking into it recently, is a bit concerning because it goes back to that organic method, that it's so controlled and contrived that it can't do its own thing. People can't think for themselves. They're being told how it works, and it's just too much structure, regulation.
Other than Austrian economics, every other school of economics is based on how do we make central planning more efficient?
Yeah.
It's retarded.
So many people, like we see it now. I mean, one of the things that annoyed me about living in London, one of the reasons I wanted to leave, and this was me, I give myself credit that I felt it so young. I was like, there's not a very nice energy from where I'm from. I mean, I don't live right in central London, which is really, really cool. But where I'm from, the attitude to people's lives is so negative, and everyone's got their hand out in some way. The benefit system has just ruined society because people are constantly waiting to be helped, waiting to be told, that again, outsourcing. They're waiting for the government to come and help them when they've all got the ability to help themselves, but they have to think and they have to want to. They have to have that oomph for life to build and create things and use their abilities. But somewhere along the line, we've all just been dumbed down and have our hands out.
Yeah, well, I think it's really hard to actually be an entrepreneur. You need to have a certain energy to it, but also because the free market is so damn broken, right? It's so hard to actually run a profitable business. Because, like, imagine if every business in the world right now stopped getting taxed, right? They had just like an extra 30 to 50% sitting around at the end of the year, every business would be thriving. Well, not thriving, but like every business would be doing much better who are actually doing good work, Whereas like there's such a narrow tube now to like actually be a good entrepreneur because of that. And I think people aren't necessarily cut out to deal with how difficult it is. Therefore, they're all just like, please.
The the reward is not there. I know from having a small business, the perception that I was just raking it in and, oh, like, from staff I had, they just thought I was rolling in it. And you're like, "No, no, the reward versus the risk and the stress that I'm undertaking here is not what it should be." Otherwise, to your point, we'd have a lot more businesses and a lot more people building and doing. And yeah, and like, yeah, the incentives aren't there. Like going back to the benefit system, the attitude is, why should I work if I get the same amount to do nothing? Which just creates these no unmotivated sloths. And that's not contributing to an exciting society. That's why places where there's a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of creatives, they're cool places to be. And a lot of that is, again, goes back to the how well they're being taxed or helped, given the opportunity to have these businesses.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think we'll see Bitcoin create more of a free market over time and more entrepreneurship start happening and open up versus the like, I don't even like to use this term, but it's kind of important every now and then, like the wage slave, like employee mentality. Even like working in the business that I do, right? People will come into the business, and this is like one of the beautiful teachings of Bitcoin is like proof of work, right? And it's like, I did all this work. And it's like, okay, but what did your work do to grow the business? Like if you're a graphic designer or something, it might be different. But if it's like you're a salesperson, it's like there has to be money coming from the activity that you're doing. Otherwise, you're actually not doing anything, you know? And it's super bizarre to see people be like, but I worked, I'm owed everything. And it's like, but you haven't done anything.
Yeah. That goes back to employees. Uh, we see it a lot. I've had a lot of employees over the years, and then when they leave, they go, "I'm entitled to 20 days sick leave," and you're like, "But you're not sick." Yes, but I'm entitled to it, and you owe it to me. And you're like, "I'm a small business owner. I don't have that just sitting there in this chest." But that I don't know, that relationship where I think it goes back to, again, broken monetary system goes back to scarcity. People become entitled when they have a scarce mindset because there's not enough to go around. You can't be rich. I can't be rich if you're rich because there's not enough. Whereas when you look at the Bitcoin space, people are like, bro, that's so cool. Look at you doing this because it's an abundant mindset. It's we can all succeed. We can all be a part of this. We can all do well. And again, if you've got broken money, you have to have a scarce mindset because you don't know how much you're going to get. You don't know how much it's going to be worth. You don't know, it's this worrying, "Oh, I don't have enough. They've got more than me. They're doing better than me." That doesn't feel.
The future is grim. My money, the purchasing power of my money is decreasing every single day. And if my rent goes up next month, which would only be going up basically to the rate at which it keeps up with inflation, it's like I'm now done. Whereas the Bitcoiners are like, take this Bitcoin, like I paid $100 for these earrings. I know that $100 is gonna be worth like 10 grand in 50 years, And it's like, take it. You deserve all the abundance.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think I look at a lot of my friends and I wish that they'd look into it because I just see how worried they are and how stressed they are and confused they are as well. They know that there's something wrong, but they don't know what it is. And either they're too scared to look or don't have time to look but uh, what can you do? Keep trying.
Just keep trying. Exactly. You just keep chugging along.
Did you manage to orange peel any of your family? Because that's always a hard one.
I mean, I definitely like, did a good job on my sister. My Yeah, my mom actually we did me and my mom did a 3-week car trip in Canada a few years ago. And so she was just stuck in the car with me all day, every day. So I had a real like she by the end of that, she had a really good understanding. But it was really interesting because the conclusion that she came to was I understand what this thing is. I understand why it's important, but I never see Australia adopting this in a way that would be like actually beneficial for the people. And I'm never going to leave Australia. So like I can see what this is, but it's actually just not for me, which is kind of a sad conclusion to come to. Um, but honestly, like, you know, I want to get into like a little bit of plant medicine stuff with you in a bit here, but when I first started doing like working with plant medicines, right? I was like, everyone's gonna do this. Everyone's gonna do this. This is the best thing ever, you know? And then I found Bitcoin and it was like everyone's gotta have Bitcoin. This is the best thing ever, you know? And as I've matured and as I've like learnt more along the way, like these paths aren't for everyone. They really require like radical responsibility and a change in in your life to make these things happen. And I've gone from a preacher to like very, very, very little now, you know? Like if someone's at the right point at the right time and they're like, tell me about Bitcoin, they get the full download. But my days of like trying to like twist people's arms into doing it is just it's so over, you know? People reach out to me, they're like, should I buy Bitcoin? I say yes, and they say how much, and I just go, whatever you want, you know? It's like you have to, it's proof of work. You know, I'm not here to manage someone else's emotions. If someone wants to buy Bitcoin and like a bunch of Bitcoin because they've just sold their house, but they don't want to do the proof of work to understand why they bought it, other than they trust me and Matt said it's good, then I have no interest in being the person who's like, they reach out being like, it dipped. Oh my God, it went down 20%. Like, what do I do now? It's like, do you do nothing? You just hold it. Like, you know?
Mm. I think it goes back to the responsibility though, doesn't it? The proof of work is you taking responsibility. You taking responsibility for your learning, for your storage, for everything. If we were able to take responsibility for our lives, everything would be a lot better. I have to talk about Bitcoin because I'm trying to build this community, but I do I do struggle with it. I find the combination of um I always feel like I'm preaching, and I think people look at me like, shut up because I'm talking about ayahuasca, how it changed my life, and oh, you just don't understand it. You've got to try it. About Jesus, oh, I've been saved. I didn't know myself before, and then Bitcoin. Oh, have you heard about the money system? And it's like, shut up now. Like, they just think I'm this preaching crackpot, and then now it's the homeschooling thing. Oh, if you heard about, and they're just like, I think everyone's over it. But what happens is, and I do find this, I always talk about planting seeds, and I continue to talk about it, and I don't really care what people think about me anymore, which is a good thing. What happens is when people are ready to talk about it, I've planted that flag, and then they'll come to me and go, hey, what do I do? Where do I go? And I'm like, okay, again, to your point, your responsibility, your life. But if you're ready, this is where you need to go. And that always feels good because they do come back. They do.
Sure. For sure they do.
Oh, and I say again, like when I said to you about, like, the ark, get on the boat. The floods are coming. Get on the boat. Get on the boat. And then you're just like, I'm getting on that boat with or without you. It doesn't really benefit me for you to understand it, If anything, I'm wasting time here. I should be focusing on myself. But like, there's that abundant mindset. There's plenty of room for all of us. And the reason we get so passionate about it, and the reason why it's so frustrating when people don't want to listen, is that we can see that there's an abundance. and we want people to be a part of it too. It's not a cult.
And it comes back to like a very simple saying, I think, which is you need Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need you.
Yes,
Like, you know, sorry.
it's absolutely true.
And there's economic like gain to be made by getting in early, and like only the brave get that, you know?
I get it a lot. I mean, you probably would get this too because you live in a different country. I get people who they still live in the same town that we grew up in and they've never left. And they'll say things to me like, "Oh, you're so lucky." Why? Why am I lucky? I just left. I just took the initiative and left. My life's no different to yours. Oh, well, I've got 3 kids now. Bring them with you. Like, what? Do it. I'm not lucky. I've just done it. Just if you want something, do it. It's as simple as that. Like we say about that Nike campaign, just do it. And you think, oh, just do it. But it's kind of like that we were saying about the avatar thing, like how I see you. There's so much depth to that. Just doing it is you taking ownership, you taking responsibility. Just go and do it. If you want to learn about Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin. If you want to move to the other side of the flat plane that we live on, then go and do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm people like, I get that a lot where people are like, oh, this life you've lived, yada, 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 and like my life is epic. Don't get me wrong. Like, I live in Costa Rica. My income has nothing to do with where I live. So I can literally move around the world freely. I live on a Bitcoin standard. I drink an ayahuasca, healing my ancestral trauma, all this stuff. It's awesome. But like, I have my desktop wallpaper is build the dream, your life depends on it. And it does. Your life depends on it. Like everyone has dreams. And for me to get from where I was living in my parents' place in Sydney to where I am now, there was so many hard days. Like I was living for 2 years, probably in total, where I was so broke I couldn't buy a meal. 2 years, you know, like work trading, like for like with people that I respected, so that I could learn entrepreneurship under and everything like that. Like for board and food, right? Like I worked out what I wanted to achieve in my life, and I just did not stop until I got there, you know? But it was not luck. There was no luck at all.
No, isn't it? What is it? Luck is opportunity and preparation, or something like that. It shows, well, everyone has opportunity. They have to seek it. You have to grasp it. Some of us have more opportunities than others, but the responsibility is on the individual. Um, where I talk this about my stepdaughter. She's just turned 18, and I want to scream at her all the life lessons that I've had through. They are life lessons. They're learned lessons that I have actually had to learn the hard way. Like you say, the days when you freaking have to. Well, when I smoked, I had to decide: am I going to smoke today or am I going to eat today? And often that's why I was so skinny, because I had to make a choice, and it wasn't always the right choice. And then you look at people, and I guess because we've gone through um these life lessons, it's obvious to us. Just do it. Just, pick up and da da da. But if you haven't had that progression and you haven't taken those little itty bitty risks and then done it, maybe it just seems too hard. I don't know. But it is frustrating. Trying to give my stepdaughter this life advice, and she's, hasn't got the motivation and the drive to do it. Hopefully that will change. We'll see. With the little kids, it's teaching them to take risks every day. And that risk is okay. Oh, not a risk. Probably risk isn't the right word, but pushing yourself. So for my son who's 6, him going into a shop, but finding the thing that he needs to buy, taking it up to the counter and paying for it is huge. To me, I could do that with my eyes shut, and I probably could do, without even thinking, because I've progressed to that level. Whereas to him, he's like, that's him for the whole day. Wow, I went into the shop, paid for it, I took the money, and then I remembered to take the thing out with me, and I didn't break it, and it was so cool. And I spoke to the person, and it's like, yeah, cool, bro, that's so great. And then tomorrow, you're going to do something even trickier, and keep building yourself up.
Mhm. Mhm. 100%. It's all one step at a time too. And I think this is like a really nice progression into like the wonderful world of medicine where we all have so many like shoulds in our life as well, you know, that hold us back from doing what we want to do. It's like, oh, but my parents said this. Oh, but my friend said this. Oh, but the government said I need to go to university. Oh, but this, but this, but this, but this. All these responsibilities that I think I have versus the only responsibility, which is for you to live the life that you know you should live, you know? And like there's responsibility that comes with that where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like look after my children and my friends and my family and all of this. But it's coming from you outwards rather than I should, you know? And Bitcoin is like this thing that allows that to unfold so much smoother, but doing that inner work is a massive piece of that puzzle. So to kind of just like connect Bitcoin and plant medicines together, I guess a little bit of context is me and Nell met at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas. And I met a lot of Bitcoiners there, and a lot of them were cool. A lot of them kind of sucked. And I mean, a lot of them weren't Bitcoiners at all, to be honest. And then there was just a handful that there's just the click, it's like this person is my kind of person. And then after talking to Nell, it was like, oh, you're a Bitcoiner and you drink ayahuasca. It was like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Like I understand why we're getting along so well. So, how do you see the similarities between the two paths of like medicine work and Bitcoin?
I think I can't. We were talking about this before. I use the Avatar, the movie Avatar, when they connect the hair. I think we did this before we were recording. They connect the hair and then they say, "I see you," and it's an understanding and awareness that's so deep and complicated. And I think that's the thing about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin comes across as one thing, but the more you dive into it, you realize how uh, intricate it is and how it connects everything. When you do medicine, when you like, for me, I've only done ayahuasca. I've never done mushrooms. I've done some. I've done a lot of drugs, but that's just combined with partying and stuff like that. But when you do ayahuasca, you're listening, you're understanding. You realize that everything's so much more intricate, deeper than you can comprehend, and that's okay. I always see it as I don't understand the world, and that's okay. And one day maybe it'll make sense, but for now it's a lot bigger than I can comprehend. But it's when you do medicine, it's like this every time you do it, there's a new little key that unlocks a new lesson, an awakening, a building of your understanding, your comprehension. And there is definitely a connection with Bitcoin that I think you only see once you're in it. It's like we were saying, when you're trying to explain Bitcoin to someone who's never looked into it, or you try and explain ayahuasca to someone who's never taken it, that you can't explain because you have to be in it, you have to feel it, and you have to know for yourself what it's done for you. And I just think that both ayahuasca and Bitcoin have only done good things for me. There's no bad. Even the shitty times. So, okay, in ayahuasca, I've had some really bad experiences, but it's always been good. And Bitcoin, I guess the roller coaster of being in it, and then, things that don't not necessarily all go to plan. It's only ever good learning from it. It's everything is building you.
Mhm. Plenty of hard lessons, but they're actually blessings, you know?
Yeah. And at the time, you're like, this is never going to end.
Yeah, I really think there's like a really special connection between the two, you know? And one thing with like understanding fiat, it's so hard to understand what this thing is because of all the jargon around all the economy and this and that. And they make it sound like it's something that not a normal person can understand, you know? And you can't even see it. It's like you're a fish in water. You can't even see what's happening around you. And then you find Bitcoin, and it's this like beautiful pedestal made of gold to stand on. And you can just look out at the ocean and be like, that's fucked.
Well, the fiatness is almost the world that we're in now, where no one knows what the world is or how it works, and it's all complicated, and there's all these conspiracy theories, and you're like, "What's going on?" And that's fiat. You're like, what's going on? Where's all the money? Who controls it? It's all a mess. It doesn't make sense.
And without the perspective of Bitcoin, you can't even begin to understand it while you're in it, you know? And I feel like ayahuasca, it's kind of similar where you're just running your mind in these programs all the time and you don't even realize that you're just the fish in water. And then you finally start to like work with these medicines and have a greater perspective of like, oh, I'm an awareness. Oh, Nell is an awareness. Where like awareness is interacting and nature isn't just this backdrop to this game. It's like all part of the reality and everything starts opening and it's like this perspective that you get to stand on to actually see, you know? And then I don't want to get into it now because it's deep, but then Bitcoin and nature have such a deep connection. But that's for a whole other conversation, you know, of like what the next 50, 100,000 years of humanity looks like with Bitcoin, you know?
It's nice though when you can talk to someone that understands because like you say, "Oh, I don't want to get into it." But the fact is that when you're in something and someone else is, you can explain, like you can talk about it because it's such a crazy thing to be a part of. But someone who hasn't had that um exposure, they you just it's like talking a different language. You go back to crazy preacher mode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's why it's beautiful, like you said, that you've done the medicine with your fiance, and the fact that you can share that with each other. Like I've done it with Ricky too, and just being able to talk about your experiences with someone that you love, that's someone that understands you, especially if you've got Bitcoin as well, and all these different avenues of just cool awakening experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's unreal. I'm gonna have to get Ricky on at some point too.
Yes, he's so cool to talk to. I'm so blessed. We we have these conversations all day. Like we hang out all the time, and then when we're at home, we spend time. Someone said to him the other day, "Oh, who's your best friend?" Like Ricky's 49, and this bloke goes to him, "Oh, who's your best friend?" And he's like, "Nell." And he's like, "No, no, no, but who's your best friend?" And he's like, "Is your wife not your best friend? That's weird, because we have so much in common and we do all these things together, and it's just then you, what else would you talk about? We talk about the universe and we talk about God and we talk about Bitcoin and we talk about awareness and awakening. Like, what are we supposed to talk about? Coronation Street? We're spiritual, beautiful, complex creatures. We should be discussing this stuff.
Mm. The beauty of the human experience. That's it. That's as good as it gets.
Oh, it's everything.
Yeah. All right. This was an amazing conversation. I'm really glad we did this. I just feel like me and you, I see you, you know? I see you.
See you, Avatar. I see you. It put that little meme in there. Yes, kind of kept forgetting that we were recording this, and I'm like, I'm gonna come across as a nutter, but that's okay because as long as you see me,
All the listeners are nutters too. They're all my people who are all nutters. So no stress there.
and my mother loves me. She listens to everything I do.
Mhm.
I did get her to read the Bitcoin standards. That was pretty cool. I also recommended that I said I'll set up a family wallet, right? And I'll take any inheritance that you're planning on giving me, I'll put mine in. And then if we make a profit, I'll split it equally. And if I don't, then that's my inheritance gone. And no one took me up on it.
Yeah. It's a hard one, you know. I told my parents, I was like, "Hey, if like they have a couple of properties, and obviously because inflation is so rampant, the prices of houses have skyrocketed over the last few years. So they're in a relatively wealthy fiat position if they sold their house." And I was like, "Yeah, if you buy a Bitcoin for me, you can give my sister everything else, you know." And they were like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that, you know."
One day they'll go, "Hey Matt, remember that time that you said?" You're like, "Yeah, I tried to tell you."
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. One of these days.
Maybe they should come to the jungle,
Oh,
would they?
maybe. I could maybe get my mom to the jungle, but there's no way I'm getting my old man there. I love him to death, and he's like, taught me a lot of really good lessons, and he's like instilled some really good things in me. Like he's like the most integral man I've ever met in my entire life, and I'm happy that I like learned that from him, and I do my best to carry that torch. But he's the spirit of drywall, you know.
Mm.
God bless him.
Yeah, and each their own. My parents are kind of their their thinking is that they're just too old. Does maybe if they were younger, they just don't. It is what it is. And I'm like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure.
never know. Anyway, no, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anything you're working on outside of the Bitcoin Basin, or even how people could support Bitcoin Basin? Where can people find you? Just full plug away.
Okay, so Bitcoin Basin, we've got a website which is just basically a landing page that's got all our businesses on it. So you can check out the small businesses that we've got in Queenstown. Obviously, the main thing you could do is come to Queenstown for a visit. It's an amazing place. It sells itself. So definitely come and support our businesses. And then follow us on Instagram and X and Nosta, which just the Bitcoin Basin. So that's that. And yeah, New Zealand in itself is the Bitcoin community is growing pretty big. So people forget or don't know where New Zealand is. We're like, Australia's little long lost cousin. Like, where is it again? But we're a beautiful place.
Yeah, I've actually never been, so maybe I'll come out and see you guys.
So many Australians overlook it. My gosh, it's beautiful. Well, actually, we do get a lot of Australians here though, but it's such a beautiful place. People like me, I tell you, oh, I came here as a backpacker and then I fell in love and I stayed here. And you think, oh, that's a cool story. Not in Queenstown. That's everyone's story. Everyone comes here, they're passing through, and then they stay because it's such a cool place and it's so beautiful. And and now you can pay in Bitcoin and accept Bitcoin and stuff. So really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, these little hubs popping up is awesome because the people who are like on the Bitcoin signal, like they're smart, and they also make amazing entrepreneurs, and amazing entrepreneurs also understand Bitcoin really quickly, and the way that Bitcoin's going to build is through doing that, and you vote with your feet. There is no left or right vote anymore. It's like, where do you land? And you go where Bitcoin is, because Bitcoin is freedom.
I like that you say about the left and the right because it's amazing. I was so one way and then I moved so the other way. And then I was like, you know what? Neither it matters. I've just got to go where it suits me. And that's where we're at now.
Amazing. Okay, well, if there's nothing else that you can think of, we can wrap this thing up.
Wrap it up, Matt.
All right, awesome. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that. All my relations. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy the show, don't forget to like and subscribe below. It really helps a growing channel like this out. And click up here, it'll take you to a collection of the best this podcast has to offer.